All right, we're gonna talk about some First things first, you always want to grind where you can throw sparks towards a gasoline receptacle, because if you're gonna do something, you better do it right. Secondly, you never want to over tighten this nut more than you can hand tight on the wheel. Like, I need to put a wrench on the nut, but there's nowhere else to put a wrench. So if you get crazy doing stuff, you're not going to be able to get this wheel off again. So hand tight. Just like with an angle grinder. Like, nobody actually should or does use the wrench on an angle grinder. You just lock the thing down and tighten it as tight as you can get it on the wheel. This wheel's shot. So we're going to start today with dressing up and getting a new wheel ready. Okay. There are several different makes of these stones. Blue, I like the best because these ones have alumina oxide in them. Madsens just calls them their ceramic stone, I think, or their blue stone, but it's alumina oxide. It's good stuff. So these stones, the reason I use them is because they're exceptionally hard, and so thereby resistant to deforming their shape, and so they will keep the same cutter shape and cutter angles for a very long time. And they also work pretty well dirty. So you don't need to always just dress this stone up just because it's dirty. It'll still cut pretty good, even dirty. Okay, number two. These stones, if you like them to be spiffy clean, I learned this from Mr. Anton Schleifer, that, I'm getting out of order here. I learned from Mr. Anton Schleifer that while this stone is running, you can wash it with brake clean. Non-chlorinated brake clean. While the stone is moving, spray it with some brake clean. It'll flick all that black grease and grime off of here. And basically you'll only have to dress your stone when it is deformed enough or actually plugged up enough with metal shavings to not be cutting. Okay, so now here's what I'm talking about. I don't have my usually channel locks. We're moving houses soon, so I got my tools scattered out. Look, you just hold the stone here, you just crank it with your fingers pretty tight. Right there, that's plenty tight enough. Held my fingers on the stone, cranked it. You don't need to crack or break nothing, all right? Okay, so now, dressing the stone. These diamond dressers, can get pretty pricey, and especially this top one, because I run the multi-point, the cluster dresser here, they can get pretty pricey. So you don't want to be dressing a brand new stone with your diamond dressers and getting all the brass super hot, or that, I don't know what they glue them on with now, they used to be brass. You don't need to be getting all that super duper hot. So you get this stuff, out where she's running. This one's not super imperative to keep tight because it won't wander in. A lot of times a guy will stop this top one when it's up here and you don't want vibration to cause it to wander in. So I keep this one a little tighter on the clamp than the other. Okay, so everything's where it don't touch. So we're gonna fire this dude up. Dresser stones. Madsens will sell you these too. I'm sure Bailey's will. It's Oregon makes this part. It's just a little hard. I think it's maybe diamond impregnated dresser stone. I've had this one for I think like 10 years. They're like this long when you get them. And all you do is just take and start dressing it. It takes a long time. You don't want this thing to get super wobbly, vibraty. It'll take a while to get that out with the actual dressers. You just apply pressure. The stone will get hot, so take a minute. When it gets hot in your fingers, blow it off, cool it down, whatever you need to do. Don't take long to cool it off again. Okay, so that's not super close. It's reasonable though. So now we'll take a dresser and we'll just get her shape. The thing is you don't want to stop this too short, otherwise you'll end up with a strap so much that it'll cut that chassis a lot, and I don't like that. Now, before I start, you'll see a trick with these dressers is to apply steady pressure and apply it slow, because if you go fast across this, watch, I'm going to show you. You'll barber pull this thing. Okay, you go that fast, and what it is you've got little barber pulls, little stripes down across this thing, and it won't cut good and it won't cut square. So you want to apply steady, even pressure, and you want to apply it slow. Now, I just swipe it across and smooth out the lines a little bit. Smooth as a baby's bottom. Now we take the outside edge, and this don't take a whole lot of effort. You just want to make sure it's not too wide when you get it finished. And you want a nice, crisp, square corner. One more. Okay, now that is not too wide. That'd be about right. Might cut the chassis a tiny bit, but if you are super wide and you don't want to keep hogging on this no more, but you want to be able to run it, and you got a really wide side strap, you can take this stone to the bottom corner, because that's not a cutting edge. And you take that bottom corner down and in some and thin that edge, and you'll just get a little bit narrower of a side cutter. Like I say, this one don't particularly need it, but if you want to be done dressing, you can do that. Leave it wide and then just nip that corner off, and it'll give you a little relief so it won't cut that chassis. Now that dressing stone is something that I have had that living in my truck in the center console literally, I think, since I bought it. It just is always there. It's always where it is, whether I'm in camp, whether I'm at home, wherever my grinder goes. My truck is usually with me. And I've always got it handy. Okay. So, for angles, you guys can have a look, because I've changed them. I've changed my angles since I was younger. Brand new stone, I like it close to the back. Okay, so I'm actually just above the bottom line here, and I didn't used to be. I used to be way below here, and why I did that was so that way this chain would be rolled forward and have a blunter edge on the cutter, because I thought it was more durable. I don't think it was. I've changed from that, but it seems like a solid theory. My side straps I still like pretty straight up and down, so that's if you're holding the chain pretty level, that side strap I still like it to be pretty straight up and down because it helps capture chip. Now, the thing you want to do is you want to hold this chain. You don't want to yerk down on this arm because that's just a little couple of thrust bearings there and a bolt, really. And then all this stuff can flex pretty hard. So you want to hold down on this chain, keep pressure against this chain stop here, and then you put your finger against the bottom of that plastic so that way when you start grinding, what'll happen if you don't have good enough pressure, often see that chain starting to lift right there? That'll start to lift as you're grinding and your angles will be screwed. So you keep that pressure there and it keeps it from lifting up when you start to grind. Get some light on the subject here. Not that it's gonna help, but it'll help cast a little tiny shadow, which is really all you need. Now this is a little bit of an angle change from where we were before because it's a new stone and we've slid everything back. But what we've got is a pretty vertical side cutter. Matter of fact, a little bit too vertical, so I'm gonna make an adjustment there. About there will do. That'll set me up better. There we go. So now, got a little more vertical of a side cutter, not a super deep sweep in that way, but not backwards either. Now, you've got this angle here, which is kind of hard to see. But what you get is you get a little shadow that runs right down the corner of that chain. I think right there you can see it. And you want that corner to run right from the corner of your cutter straight down into that gullet. And that looks pretty darn good. So, and the reason why I changed these angles is because what I wanted was for them to be closer to how Oregon chain comes out of the box. Not because I think that's a super racy, sharp grind, it's because I don't particularly care. I'm getting good enough at cutting. I don't need a hot rod saw or a razor race chain to cut. What I want is to try and make materials last as long as possible. So I tried to match that Oregon grind so I'm not always hogging a bunch of material off of a new chain. Because the first thing I do when I break a new chain is of course raker it and grind it. And it's just about heartbreaking to get a brand new chain and be hogging 3 grinds worth of material off just to get it to your shape. When I'm grinding chain, I can pretty much tell exactly what somebody's done to one. Like you can tell when somebody, we're in little tiny wood right now, you can tell every single cutter that somebody's driven a wedge into. You can pretty much tell everything about what a cutter ran into in the strip by grinding their chain. Okay, now we switch to the other side. It is never going to be identical the same because this is on the outside of the machine. It's on the other side of the arm. They've tried to compensate for it. This is as square as can be. You can dial indicate this to get it as square and level as possible so there's less change between the two sides. I haven't. All my tools, all my machinist parts all burned up when my house burned down. This thing is as it came from the factory, but it is not perfectly square. So it does grind the two sides of chain a little bit different from one another. It doesn't hurt me. They still cut straight. It's just something to be aware of. They're going to be a little bit, tiny bit different of a length. They're not going to look exactly the same. You try and get them as close as you can. But short of getting a Sylvie Pro Sharp rebuilt at an exorbitant price, this is what you get. These Symington grinders are just, they're the only people on the market, really. Somebody busted one of those off. I think what happened, I think this was one of my chains, and I think what happened was I busted that raker off, rocked it, and when I rocked it, I busted that raker off, or threw the chain and bust that raker off, and then I busted the cutter, because you don't really miss a missing cutter that bad. But a cutter with no raker, that you'll notice that. Now the other thing is especially when it comes to side strap angles, is as you wear this stone out, if you want your side cutter to still cut and be good, you're going to have to slide this in eventually. And every time you slide it in, what you're doing is you're changing the angle that it contacts the stone to be a little bit sharper of an angle. Well, every time you do that, then you need to roll this further over in order to contact the stone, and every time you do that, that side cutter angle will turn from this to a little steeper, a little steeper, a little steeper. The same as your cutter, top cutter angle will get a little blunter, a little blunter, a little blunter. So that is why, to make sure you are not too drastically wild off the hook with your side cutter angle with a brand new stone. Because then as you wear in the stone and keep rolling things forward and adjusting to keep using the stone properly, you will end up with a very, very, very outrageously steep side cutter angle. So what's interesting to note is that is the angle that was on this with a wore out stone. I've adjusted it even just a little bit more steep because with the new stone, it was a little not quite straight up and down. I didn't like it. But we are going to have a little more pronounced of an angle than this with a wore out stone next time we come around. So that's something to note. Okay, and that's it. Okay, and once again, make sure you throw sparks on your gas cans because you want to make sure there's not any fumes coming out of those things. If there's fumes coming out of your gas can, it's not good for the environment. You want to make sure you burn those off. Do another chain and show you something else. You good, bro? Okay. So this is a chain that's been ground on a couple times. So this one has some pretty exaggerated angles because I don't file perfect every single time. I'm a human. So this will be a good opportunity to show you what it looks like. You get a hand filed chain that's got some weird angle issues, and we'll get this squared back up. That wind right there is why we're not working today. So it don't take a ton. You don't got to go crazy re-squaring up this angle. It don't take a ton, just a little bit. And the reason is because as you push it up, that stone's angled. I used to take way too much. I would start way back here and then peel it. It don't need that. It'll ride up that. The stone is angled and the cutter is angled. And so if you make contact, I mean, just a couple of maybe 20 thousandths away from the corner, even if you have a really exaggerated angle as it comes up that top, it will, here, hold it up here. As you come up that top, it'll ride and start fixing itself. Yoink, right there. I gotta be able to see that corner to see where to stop. But you get the idea from seeing that it makes contact. You don't need to go crazy. But that is exactly the reason why a lot of guys don't want to hand file one at the end of the day, because it can, especially if you're going crazy refixing the angles, it can feel like you're just taking way more life out of the chain than is necessary. And really, I mean, if you do want maximum chain life, it's better to just grind them every single time. But I don't feel like I need to take that much off to square them back up again, so. It's worth it to me to spend that 5 minutes at quitting time hand filing the chain, so that way I don't gotta bring it home and fire up the generator and grind it. So we're just coming to where we see that edge roll to the corner. Right there. And it makes it easier too if you're having a hard time seeing your corner. Go ahead and dress your outside edge even though the stone isn't ready. Now you got a fresh white on black corner to aim for. So if you're having a hard time seeing, go ahead and dress your outside side cutter edge again and you'll get a fresh white corner again to look at. But I try my very best to look at the corner of the chain and not the corner of the stone. Doesn't always work out, but as long as you can keep your, it's like training your brain to do something that doesn't make sense, you know? To watch the tool being worked on, and that feels like sort of maybe reactive instead of proactive. But it really does help you run when the stone, you know, the corners were not in good lighting right here. I don't get to really, the light isn't casting a good shadow. And so I just watch the chain. Boink, right there, it just started to roll at the corner. So then that's it. And I'll show you. See, you can tell something's off. I'll show you. There's the shadow right down the corner, see? So it does work, you just got to pay attention. As with most things, it can be solved by using your head and paying attention. Other side. Well, the big new stone, I like to just get it started before I flick the switch. I don't know if it matters, but it sure does feel like if I was a motor trying to get a big old grinding stone started, I'd like to have a little help. The side's taking a little much off. Because as I hand filed this, I didn't make both sides perfectly even. But next time I file rakers, which will be next time I grind, it'll solve pretty near all of that problem. Now, another thing to note is like this little bit of pitch turning black on here. That's not something to worry about, so you can scrape it off with your thumbnail there. But what you don't want is to turn the metal a color. So I heard some people talking about if I turn the metal a color and now it won't file right. And that is true. If you turn the metal a color, this is air hardening tool steel. And so if you get this stuff red hot, it'll air harden and it won't be tempered at all, and it'll be harder than glass. And not only harder than glass, it'll be fragile. It just ain't right. But also I've seen guys get nervous because they see that old pitch start to turn the color, and then they're always bouncing this thing off of the stone. You don't need to do that. This is ceramic stone. This thing don't produce a bunch of heat. You don't need to drive into it either, but you can let that stone do its work and turn that pitch a little color, and you can still stick your finger on there. It's not hot. It didn't air harden, okay? So that is a valid point. But you guys are gomers. You need to trust me. Now this one's got such a drastic angle on it from the file that I'm not even gonna grind all of that out, but I don't care. There'll be a cutting edge there and I'm not gonna notice it when I'm sawing. And I think part of the thing that I keep trying to explain is that very inexperienced guys, and it doesn't matter what discipline it is, very inexperienced guys are enamored by equipment. They're obsessive over grinds, grind angles, hot rod saws, what mods did you do, how did you port that, who ported that, how hopped up is that, I need that so I can do my job. And it seems it's that way in gun culture. New guys want the best, most finest equipment, and you guys don't. You need experience. You can run the cheapest, most garbage equipment on the market. I mean, this is just Oregon chain. These are stock saws that I put max flows on, not as a performance modification, because they're easier to keep clean and they stay clean for longer. They last longer. But you guys can run more factory-like equipment and do exactly the job, but what you need is training and what you need is experience. And that's the same with weapons. You can buy a $5,000 setup with Gucci components on it and you still don't know how to shoot. You can buy the most hopped up saw with the most razor hot rod race grind on it and you still don't know how to saw. So you guys, it is good to maintain your equipment. It is good to have as good of equipment as you can afford. But please don't expect me to be as fixated on equipment and grind angles and Gucci components, because I don't think that most guys need that. I think you guys need training, and I think you need experience. And you get that by maybe running some cheaper gear, no matter what discipline it is, and spending that money or saving that money on being able to get more time on the saw, more time behind the trigger, more time behind your race car if that's what you're into. Spend more time with your equipment and less time spending the most money on the most expensive Gucci gear. These grinders, I understand these are not cheap. I don't know what they go for now. I think I paid $1,100, $1,000 when I bought it. They might be like $1,500 now, but they're worth getting. If you're gonna saw every single day, it will save you so much time and just heartache and effort, because like I file a chain at the end of the day because I don't hammer as many chains as I used to when I was new. And so at the end of the day, I've got a chain that's a little wood dull, and it's 5 minutes out of my life while everybody else is packing out their gear or changing a chain, fueling up, getting their gear ready to get out of the woods. I can touch an edge and it's no big deal. But when I foul one up bad in the woods, if I rock a chain or if I throw a chain and I got some corners knocked off really bad, that chain gets changed. I've got 2 or 3 sharp chains in my pack. You should as well. Everyone, especially new guys, you should have at least a couple sharp chains in your pack, and it'll save you heartache and pain to just have a grinder to grind your chains, square them up, keep them running smooth, keep everything running straight and square. That's what they say, falling for the show and bucking for the dough, right? You need nice square bucking to be able to make her go, and this grinder will really, really help you do it. So that's a thing that I recommend spending the money on it. But as for whether you want to run a Sylvie SDM4 that guys are wanting, $2,000 for now, a Pro Sharp, that's an absolutely wonderful grinder. I think it grinds the best chains I've ever had, but this will do the job. And if you're trying to get started, get you a grinder, get you some tools. The grind that comes on it from Madsens, which I think is from Salt Creek. I don't know if the grinder company puts that angle on or if Madsens puts that angle on. It's pretty good. It matches Oregon chain pretty good. It's not a bad grind. It works pretty good. So get a grinder, get a stone. This will come with a single point dresser on the top edge. Spend the money and get a multi-point. I don't know if they call them multi-point or clusters anymore, but we'll show you what the difference is real quick. We've got the single point dressing stone. You can see it has a single diamond point right there. It's pretty thick. And the multi-point has a little cluster of diamonds on the end there. See that? And just spend the money on your top one and buy the multi-point dresser and get that switched out. Because it'll make a much nicer, smoother top cut on there. The other thing is these stoppers, they're not good for anything. I grind my chains to the corner. I don't change anything while I'm grinding. If you grind every cutter to the corner, they're going to be the same, trust me. What happens is guys put this thing in, and then they grind to the stopper, and they grind to the stopper, and they grind to the stopper, and these things move, wiggle around enough that just doesn't get you as accurate as leaving this stuff all the same and just grind to the corner. If you grind to the corner on the same settings on every tooth, trust me, everything will be the same. But if you leave this loose, where this all flops around, think about it. You're gonna have a different angle, a different angle, a different angle. You're gonna apply different angles to everything. Doesn't matter even if you use the stops, that ain't good. Everything needs to get tightened down, locked down, and then you grind to the corner on every cutter. Okay, the other thing, I don't run these guards. I don't think they're necessary. You can touch that stone and it shines you up a little bit, but it ain't gonna really screw you up. If you nail into the sharp part, it's gonna cut you whether the guard's on there or not. So I run it with the guards off. I run it with all this off, and the reason why is because I want to be able to run this stone until it's tiny. This stone had a little bit more life left in it, but what happens is you start to get a little lip here where your dresser hits on the housing there and it won't go up any further. You can keep using it, but what it does is it wears the dresser in a little bit, and so I just kind of cut it off. You can get a little more if you really want to squeeze an extra couple bucks out of this thing, but they're $40 or something, and I just get a new one. This one, the better I've got it cutting, the less I have to hog off of chains, the longer these stones have been lasting. I think this one lasted, this was easily over 6 months. I think this one was almost a year this stone lasted. It ain't gonna be nothing like that when you're new. You're gonna be dressing stones hard, you're gonna be wrecking chains, you're gonna be hogging a lot of material off, but one of these blue ones will last a lot longer than a white one. If you don't want to spring for the blue, I recommend the white. The white and the salmon are exactly the same, but the white just seems to dress up and show a little better of a corner. So I run the white instead of the salmon. I don't like the gray. Some guys do. The gray is a waxed stone, and I just ain't a fan. So I would stick to the blue or the white if you don't want to spend the money on the blue. But the blue is worth every penny, I promise. Other than that, that's it, you guys. If you need to get with me to talk about what is like the cheapest, most economical way to get into things, and whether that's with grinding, with filing. I'm gonna do a filing series on here to try and help some of you get into this for the cheapest way possible. And that'll be round filing and square filing and chain maintenance. I will try and do a series of maintenance series, so that way you guys can get into this, spend less money on gear and techie weird like gearhead stuff, and more money on saw gas and oil using your tools. The same applies for guns. You guys need some advice on what is cheap gear, cheap equipment, and I don't want to say cheap like chintzy, inexpensive equipment that's high quality, so you can maybe save $1,000 and spend that money on ammunition. Get with me. I would love to direct some of you guys in the right direction, so you can spend less money on gear, more money on using your tools and getting proficient with them. I think that's it. Long-winded guy strikes again. Sorry about it. Have a good day. Goodbye.